today, we stand at the crossroads of history. A political earthquake has just shaken the core of Israel's leadership, and the question echoing through every street, every newsroom, and every global capital is this: has Benjamin Netanyahu finally been ousted from the prime minister's chair? This is not just another political shuffle. This moment could redefine the entire balance of power in the Middle East and perhaps reshape global alliances as we know them. For decades, Benjamin Netanyahu has been more than just a leader. He's been a symbol of Israel's hardline policies, its fierce nationalism, and its uncompromising stance in both domestic and international affairs. But even symbols can fall, and today Israel burns with uncertainty. Crowds have taken to the streets, some cheering, others protesting, as reports swirl that Netanyahu's political fortress, once unbreakable, is now cracking from within. The parliament, the judiciary, and even the military elite all seem to be converging in a storm of discontent and pressure that no amount of political maneuvering can contain. Netanyahu's leadership has long been defined by defiance against opposition parties, against peace talks, and often against global criticism. But the tide of history always turns. In recent months, Israel has witnessed a wave of political infighting, corruption scandals, and unprecedented protests that have paralyzed government institutions. The Israeli economy, under immense strain, has added another layer of pressure. The youth, once silenced, now march with passion, demanding transparency, justice, and change. But let's not be naive. Netanyahu's potential fall is not just an Israeli matter. This has global ripples. Washington, Moscow, Tehran, and even Riyadh are watching closely, calculating what this means for the regional power map. Because when Israel's leadership changes, so too do the equations of war, peace, and diplomacy. If Netanyahu truly loses his grip, the questions are endless. Will his rivals continue his hardline policies? Will peace negotiations revive? Or will Israel plunge deeper into political chaos and division? And then there's the emotional undercurrent, the feeling among ordinary Israelis. Many see this as the end of an era, while others view it as liberation from decades of political dominance. His loyalists cry betrayal. His critics cry justice. The truth lies somewhere in between, in the uneasy tension between the desire for stability and the hunger for reform. What's happening now is not just a leadership change, it's a reckoning. A nation is questioning its identity, its democracy, and its moral compass. The air in Israel feels charged, like a storm about to break. Across the political corridors of Jerusalem, the whispers have turned into roars. Benjamin Netanyahu, the man who has dominated Israeli politics for decades, may finally be on the brink of losing his seat of power. It's a moment many thought would never come, yet here it is, unfolding in real time. The so-called King of Israel, who held his throne with iron discipline and strategic cunning, now stands at the edge of political extinction. This is more than just a political reshuffle. It's an earthquake that's shaking the very foundation of Israel's governance, a moment that could reshape not only the country's leadership, but its identity in the eyes of the world. For years, Netanyahu has been the unshakable force of Israeli politics, the master tactician who outsmarted rivals, survived scandals, and manipulated coalitions with unmatched precision. But today, the walls of his empire are showing cracks. The once loyal allies have begun to distance themselves. Cabinet members whisper discontent in private meetings. Party insiders leak information to the media, and the parliament, long seen as his playground, now looks more like a battlefield. The opposition, galvanized by years of frustration, has found a renewed sense of unity and purpose. Even members of Netanyahu's own political circle sense that the tide is shifting and no one wants to be the last one standing when the wave crashes. Across the nation, the reactions are electric. On one side, the streets of Tel Aviv and Haifa are filled with citizens celebrating the possibility of a political rebirth, chanting slogans of freedom, democracy, and change. On the other, Netanyahu loyalists call it a political coup, warning that his removal would destabilize the nation at a time when external threats loom large. Yet beneath the chaos lies a profound truth. Israel is entering a period of reckoning. The people are questioning the legitimacy of power itself, how it's gained, how it's maintained, and at what cost it endures. Netanyahu's downfall, if it truly comes to pass, will not be due to a single scandal or decision. It's the culmination of years of accumulated tension, the growing divide between the government and the governed, the erosion of trust, and the fatigue of a public that has watched the same figure dominate for too long. Even the media, once carefully managed under his influence, has grown increasingly bold, exposing stories that challenge the image of the strongmen who once seemed invincible. The Israeli political system, once revolving around Netanyahu's gravitational pull, is now spinning out of alignment. And that disarray may just be the price of long-term control finally reaching its limits. The real hook in this unfolding story is not just the fall of one man, but the collapse of a political era. Every empire, every strong leader eventually faces the same test: what happens when power begins to slip through their fingers. Netanyahu's entire legacy, built on nationalism, military strength, and unyielding defiance, is now being tested by the very people he claimed to protect. The same citizens who once saw him as the guardian of Israel's security now question whether his leadership has become a liability instead of a safeguard. The once unthinkable question, what comes after Netanyahu, is now the loudest one in the room. Around the world, leaders and analysts are watching this drama unfold with fascination and concern. Washington wonders what a post-Netanyahu Israel will mean for its Middle Eastern strategy. European powers quietly welcome the possibility of new diplomatic openings, while regional rivals like Iran watch closely, sensing potential shifts in security dynamics. Within Israel itself, a generation of young voters tired of political stagnation and corruption are rising, their voices amplified by social media and protest movements that refuse to fade. The future they imagine is different, less anchored to fear, more open to reform, and ready to challenge the institutions that once seemed untouchable. In moments like this, history doesn't whisper, it shouts. The question isn't just whether Netanyahu will lose his position, but whether Israel itself is ready to move beyond the politics of survival and into a new era of accountability and renewal. Every rumor, every resignation, every vote in the Knesset feels like a drumbeat counting down to an inevitable reckoning. The world's eyes are fixed on Jerusalem, waiting to see whether this will be the end of Netanyahu's rule or the rebirth of a nation long held in his shadow. The corridors of Israeli politics have erupted into chaos. What was once a tightly controlled system under Netanyahu's iron rule has now descended into a storm of uncertainty and political maneuvering. With Netanyahu's grip on power slipping, Israel faces what analysts are calling a vacuum of leadership, a dangerous limbo that could define the nation's next chapter. In the wake of his potential ousting, the once unshakable Likud party is splintering, coalition talks are erupting behind closed doors, and rival factions are scrambling to claim the throne before the dust even settles. The power struggle isn't just about who leads next. It's about the very soul of the Israeli state and which vision will dominate in a country torn between security fears, religious divides, and economic strain. Inside the Knesset, the atmosphere feels combustible. Lawmakers whisper in corners, alliances shift by the hour, and the tension is palpable, as if everyone knows that one wrong move could collapse the entire political structure. The irony is unmistakable. Netanyahu's political genius once lay in his ability to manipulate coalitions to his advantage, yet it is that same fragile coalition system now threatening to consume him. The balance of power has never been more precarious. The right-wing bloc, long his loyal base, is fracturing under the weight of ambition. Figures who once bowed to Netanyahu's authority are now quietly reaching out to rivals, crafting backroom deals, and promising reforms that may never come. The left and center parties, sensing blood in the water, are equally aggressive, positioning themselves as the saviors of a new Israel ready to rise from the ashes of the old. The hook that keeps the world watching is the unpredictability. No one knows who will emerge as the new face of Israeli leadership, or whether any leader can even hold the country together. Israel's political system has always been volatile, but this moment feels different. The vacuum is wider, the stakes higher, and the divisions deeper. The instability extends beyond the Knesset walls. Business leaders worry about economic paralysis. The defense establishment fears a lapse in authority during a critical security period, and ordinary citizens feel caught in a system that seems more concerned with power than governance. Each day without a clear direction fuels public frustration, giving rise to mass protests and social unrest that cut across ideological lines. Netanyahu's absence from the top doesn't just create a vacancy, it dismantles the entire political order that revolved around him. For years, he was the axis on which all political calculations turned. Even his enemies built their strategies around opposing him. Now, without that anchor, Israel's leadership landscape feels unmoored. Parties that once defined themselves by their resistance to Netanyahu are struggling to articulate what they stand for in his absence. The ideological fragmentation between secular and religious, hawkish and moderate, traditionalist and reformist, has never been more pronounced. And amid that fragmentation lies a chilling truth. Whoever steps into the power vacuum will inherit not stability, but a storm. Behind the scenes, powerful forces are moving. The military establishment, always a key player in Israeli politics, is quietly evaluating which leaders it can trust to maintain continuity and control. Foreign diplomats are in constant communication with Tel Aviv, seeking assurances that Israel's next government will not derail ongoing security partnerships or economic agreements. In Washington, policymakers are preparing for every scenario, from a coalition collapse to snap elections that could drag the country into months of political paralysis. The uncertainty itself becomes a weapon used by some to bargain for power and by others to spread fear about what comes next. Yet perhaps the most striking element in this unfolding drama is the sense of inevitability. The very system that Netanyahu once mastered now threatens to swallow everyone involved. Coalition talks drag on into the night. Public opinion polls swing wildly, and each speech, each leaked recording, each scandal adds fuel to an already blazing fire. The power vacuum isn't just about leadership, it's about identity, legitimacy, and survival. As the dust rises over Jerusalem, one truth becomes undeniable. Israel is facing a defining moment where the loss of a single man has exposed the fragility of an entire system. The hooks are everywhere, in the whispers of betrayal, the shifting alliances, the looming fear that no one is truly in control. The nation waits, restless and divided, wondering whether this vacuum will give birth to renewal or chaos. In the absence of Netanyahu, every politician wants to be king. but few seem ready to carry the weight of the crown. The streets of Israel are no longer quiet. From Tel Aviv's bustling squares to Jerusalem's old stone avenues, the sound of protest has become the heartbeat of a nation in turmoil. Tens of thousands of citizens have poured into the streets, waving banners, chanting slogans, and demanding that their voices be heard. The air is thick with urgency, and beneath the chants lies a deeper truth. The people are no longer willing to accept the political status quo. This is not a momentary outburst. It is a movement fueled by exhaustion, anger, and hope. For years, many Israelis felt silenced, trapped in a cycle of leadership that seemed unbreakable. But now, with Netanyahu's rule trembling, that silence has broken and it has erupted into a roar that echoes across the world. The images are striking. Seas of Israeli flags blending with placards reading, "Enough is enough," and "Democracy will not die." The protests are not confined to one demographic or ideology. They cut across generations and backgrounds. Veterans stand beside students, business owners march alongside factory workers, secular citizens lock arms with the religious. The common thread uniting them all is a shared demand for accountability, transparency, and a government that serves its people rather than itself. It's a sight rarely seen in Israel's modern political history. A groundswell of public defiance so massive that it's forcing those in power to look over their shoulders with unease. The hook that keeps the global media riveted is not just the size of these demonstrations, but their intensity. They are not orchestrated by parties or institutions. They are organic, spontaneous, and emotionally charged. Every chant, every flare of resistance feels like a message to the ruling elite, a declaration that the era of impunity is over. What began as small gatherings to challenge government overreach has transformed into one of the largest civic movements the country has ever seen. The energy is relentless and the symbolism is powerful. In cities where Netanyahu once commanded unwavering support, protesters now fill the streets demanding his resignation. The shift in sentiment is unmistakable, and it signals a political awakening that may be irreversible. Within the movement, there is also tension, the friction of differing visions for Israel's future. Some protesters want sweeping political reforms, others demand new elections, while a growing faction calls for a complete overhaul of the nation's democratic framework. Yet, despite these differences, the unity of purpose remains unbroken. The rallying cry is clear: the people want change, and they are willing to stand in the streets day and night to claim it. Police barricades, water cannons, and arrests have done little to deter the crowds. Each attempt to suppress the protests only amplifies their determination. The nation is witnessing the rebirth of civic resistance, a force that no politician, however powerful, can easily silence. The world is watching these protests with fascination. To international observers, they represent more than internal dissent. They are a reflection of a society wrestling with its conscience. Images of candlelight vigils, massive human chains, and emotional speeches have spread across global news outlets, igniting debates about democracy, leadership, and accountability. For Israel's allies, especially in Washington, this unrest raises uncomfortable questions. How long can a nation sustain political tension of this magnitude without breaking? How will this turmoil impact regional stability, ongoing conflicts, or diplomatic negotiations? Every protest sign, every chant, every night of defiance carries weight far beyond Israel's borders. The emotional power of this moment lies in its unpredictability. No one knows how far it will go or what it will achieve. The energy of the masses has created an atmosphere of suspense, as if the entire country stands on the edge of transformation. In cafes and homes, Conversations are dominated by the protests, families are divided, friendships strained, and the media runs nonstop coverage of the unfolding scenes. The government, meanwhile, teeters between concession and crackdown, unsure how to quell the rising tide without igniting even more fury. It is a delicate dance, and one misstep could turn discontent into full-scale rebellion. What hooks audiences most is the raw emotion pulsing through the nation, the defiant faces in the crowd, the chants that shake city squares, the unwavering belief that change is possible. It is not just about Netanyahu anymore. It's about reclaiming the nation's dignity, its democracy, and its direction. Israel has reached a boiling point where politics has collided with the power of the people, and in that collision, something irreversible has begun. The roar from the streets grows louder each day, echoing a message that will define Israel's future. The people have awakened, and they will not be silenced again. The shockwaves of Israel's political upheaval are not confined within its borders. They are rippling across the globe, unsettling governments, investors, and military strategists alike. From Washington to Moscow, from Tehran to Riyadh, every major capital is recalculating its stance, watching closely as the Israeli political landscape teeters on the edge of transformation. The potential fall of Netanyahu, a leader whose alliances and enmities shape decades of geopolitical strategy, has forced the world to pause and ask what comes next. The uncertainty has ignited both anticipation and anxiety as the international community braces for a shift that could redraw the contours of power in the Middle East. The United States finds itself in a delicate position. For years, Netanyahu was seen as a cornerstone of U.S. strategy in the region, a reliable, if controversial, partner who maintained stability through strength. His fall would leave Washington without one of its most seasoned allies, forcing American diplomats to navigate a new political environment with untested leaders and unpredictable agendas. Behind closed doors, policymakers debate how to maintain influence in a post-Netanyahu Israel while avoiding the appearance of interference. The Biden administration, already juggling crises in Eastern Europe and Asia, now faces another question. Can Israel's next government be trusted to maintain the same alignment with U.S. interests, or will it seek to redefine its foreign policy independence? The whispers within the State Department suggest a mixture of concern and quiet opportunity. Concern for potential instability, but opportunity for a fresh approach to peace and regional diplomacy. Across the Atlantic, Europe watches with a cautious eye. For the European Union, Netanyahu's departure could open the door to renewed dialogue on issues long frozen under his leadership, particularly peace talks with Palestine. European leaders, critical of Netanyahu's hardline stances, may see this as a chance to revive diplomatic engagement. Yet the uncertainty surrounding Israel's internal politics makes such optimism fragile. A divided Israeli parliament could easily derail any efforts toward peace, replacing progress with paralysis. European media headlines reflect this duality: hope for transformation, but fear of chaos. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, reactions are far more charged. Tehran's leadership sees Netanyahu's potential ousting as poetic justice, the fall of a man who spent years rallying the world against Iran's ambitions. Iranian state media wastes no time portraying his downfall as divine retribution, a victory for those who have resisted what they call Israeli aggression. But beneath the celebration lies caution. Iran understands that instability in Israel can be unpredictable. A weakened government could lead to either restraint or reckless retaliation. The regional power balance is fragile, and one miscalculation could ignite tensions across multiple fronts. Riyadh and the Gulf states, too, are watching with strategic precision. Under Netanyahu, Israel built quiet but powerful ties with several Arab nations, alliances forged through shared concerns about Iran and mutual economic interests. If Netanyahu's era ends, those ties could either deepen or unravel depending on the policies of his successor. The Gulf monarchies value stability above all, and the sight of mass protests and political division in Israel is a warning sign. The question they're asking is not whether Israel will remain strong, but whether it will remain predictable. Even Moscow has entered the conversation. Vladimir Putin, a tactician who has long exploited global instability to strengthen Russia's hand, is undoubtedly analyzing Israel's internal conflict as a potential opportunity. Russia's close coordination with both Syria and Iran gives it leverage, and a distracted Israel could provide Moscow more freedom to maneuver in the region. The Kremlin's tone remains publicly neutral, but behind the scenes, intelligence networks are active, assessing how a leadership vacuum in Jerusalem could shift military and diplomatic alignments. The hooks driving global attention are powerful uncertainty, vulnerability, and the prospect of transformation. Every major power has something to gain or lose in this moment. Financial markets react with nervous energy, regional militaries remain on alert, and world leaders quietly reach out to Tel Aviv, seeking clarity that no one can yet provide. The domino effect of Netanyahu's possible fall is already visible. New coalitions are forming, old rivalries are stirring, and the fragile web of Middle Eastern diplomacy is stretching under the weight of change. What makes this moment so compelling is the unpredictability of it all. Israel's allies are hesitant to celebrate or condemn, aware that the wrong signal could destabilize an already volatile region. Its adversaries, though eager to exploit weakness, understand that chaos in Israel could trigger wider conflict. This balance between opportunity and danger, hope and fear, is what defines the global response. The fall of one leader in Jerusalem has set off a geopolitical chain reaction, proving once again that in the Middle East, every tremor in politics is felt as an earthquake across the world. The economic and security landscape of Israel is now walking a tightrope, trembling under the weight of political uncertainty. As Netanyahu's potential fall looms larger, financial markets, investors, and military strategists are all holding their breath. The once stable image of Israel as a fortress of economic strength and military readiness now faces a dual crisis. The economy wavers while national security questions grow louder. The uncertainty isn't just political, it's structural, reaching into the foundations of how Israel sustains itself as a regional power, and the world can sense it. The Israeli shekel has shown flickers of instability, foreign investors are hesitating, and economic analysts are warning that prolonged leadership chaos could trigger ripple effects across trade, technology, and defense sectors that have long been Israel's pride. The hooks in this story are undeniable. A thriving economy now shadowed by political disarray and a military establishment uncertain of the command above it. For decades, Netanyahu built his legacy on economic resilience and security dominance. Under his watch, Israel transformed into a tech superpower, its innovation sector booming, its defense industry thriving, and its global partnerships multiplying. But when the top weakens, the structure begins to shake. Today, the fear among Israeli economists is that instability at the political level will bleed into the financial system. Every rumor of a coalition collapse sends tremors through stock markets. Every delay in policy decisions freezes investor confidence. Israel's billion-dollar tech firms, the engines of its modern prosperity, now face questions about regulation, taxation, and leadership continuity. Venture capital, which once poured into Tel Aviv's startup ecosystem with confidence, has slowed, and international firms are quietly reassessing their exposure. Beneath this economic tension lies an even greater concern: security. Israel's strength has always rested on a delicate balance between economic power and military vigilance. When one falters, the other feels the strain. Inside the defense establishment, senior officials are expressing growing unease. They worry that the political turmoil could paralyze decision making at a time when the region remains volatile. Intelligence agencies warn that Israel's enemies are watching closely, waiting for signs of distraction or weakness. Hezbollah's movements in the north, Iran's growing influence in Syria, and the instability in Gaza are all magnified by uncertainty at the top. For Israel, security lapses are not theoretical risks, they're existential threats. And when the political command wavers, so does the nation's readiness to respond. The hook that makes this moment so intense is the convergence of these two fears: economic slowdown and security fragility. At the same time, the last time Israel faced such intertwined crises, it was under the pressure of war. Now, the battlefield is internal. The Bank of Israel has issued cautious statements to calm the markets, but behind the diplomatic tone lies anxiety. Economic reforms are stalled, budgets frozen, and critical infrastructure projects delayed. Without clear leadership, ministries operate in uncertainty, unable to predict what direction policy will take. Small business owners feel the pinch first, export sectors face bureaucratic gridlock, and the middle class, long a symbol of Israel's stability, is beginning to feel the squeeze of inflation and insecurity. Foreign allies are watching with increasing concern. The United States, Israel's primary defense partner, has begun quiet assessments of how political instability could affect joint operations and intelligence sharing. European governments, many of which rely on Israeli cybersecurity and technology collaborations, are reevaluating contracts in light of the unrest. Even Gulf nations that recently normalized relations with Israel are cautious, unsure whether to continue deepening economic cooperation amid an unpredictable political climate. The concern is not just whether Israel will remain strong, but whether it can remain stable. At the same time, the Israeli military establishment, known for its discipline and unity, feels the tension of leadership uncertainty. Top generals find themselves navigating political minefields, trying to reassure the public and allies that national defense remains uncompromised. Yet, in private, they express frustration that internal divisions and civilian unrest are consuming energy that should be directed outward toward national security priorities. The blurred line between governance and defense has become one of Israel's greatest vulnerabilities. The emotional pulse of the nation reflects this anxiety. Ordinary citizens, long accustomed to resilience in the face of external threats, are now confronting a different kind of fear, one that comes from within. The fear that indecision could cost them jobs, that policy paralysis could weaken their defense, that political chaos could unravel the very identity of the nation they've built. It's a moment when confidence is currency and confidence is slipping fast. The hooks are powerful, a proud economy stumbling, a mighty defense force uneasy, and a public wondering how long the center can hold. Israel's strength has always been its ability to thrive under pressure, but this time the pressure is internal, and it's testing every fiber of the nation's endurance. The potential fall of Benjamin Netanyahu is not just a political event. It is the possible end of an era and the beginning of a pivotal moment in Israel's history. For decades, Netanyahu's leadership has been the axis around which Israeli politics, society, and international relations revolve. He has been a figure both feared and admired, a leader who could command unwavering loyalty while provoking intense opposition. Now, as his position falters, the question arises, is this the end of the old guard or the start of a transformative rebirth for a nation long defined by his dominance? The tension between closure and renewal creates an atmosphere charged with uncertainty, anticipation, and opportunity. The emotional resonance of this moment is palpable across Israel. Citizens who have lived under Netanyahu's shadow for years are grappling with conflicting feelings: relief, hope, anxiety, and skepticism. For his critics, the potential ousting represents justice, accountability, and a chance to reset the nation's priorities. For his supporters, it signals instability, loss of experience, and fear of an unpredictable political future. The streets from Haifa to Beersheba reflect this dichotomy. Demonstrations, vigils, and rallies pulsate with energy, capturing the collective heartbeat of a society at a crossroads. People are not merely protesting or celebrating, they are staking a claim to Israel's future. Every chant, every banner, every voice carries weight. A reminder that leadership is more than a seat of power, it is the embodiment of a nation's identity. Globally, observers recognize the significance of this moment. Netanyahu's tenure has shaped decades of alliances, conflicts, and policies that extend far beyond Israel's borders. Washington, long accustomed to his steadfast approach, now faces the task of navigating a new political landscape. European capitals, previously frustrated with hardline stances, may see this as an opportunity for diplomacy and engagement. Regional powers, from Iran to Saudi Arabia, monitor every development with strategic calculation. The hooks here are irresistible. The fall of one leader could trigger shifts in alliances, recalibrate defense strategies, and redefine regional power dynamics. Israel's internal change is instantly globalized, reminding the world that the country's domestic politics have always been a matter of international consequence. Internally, the question of continuity versus change dominates the political dialogue. The old guard, those entrenched figures who built their careers alongside Netanyahu, face existential uncertainty. Their influence, once unquestioned, now hangs by a thread. At the same time, a new generation of politicians and activists sees an opening, a rare chance to shape policy, address long-standing grievances, and implement reforms long blocked by a dominant leader. The tension between maintaining stability and pursuing transformation creates a high-stakes environment where every decision carries amplified consequences. Each negotiation, each alliance, each statement is scrutinized, tested, and dissected in real time. The nation is acutely aware that a misstep could plunge it back into crisis or, alternatively, pave the way for unprecedented renewal. This transitional period is also a test of Israel's democratic institutions. Courts, parliament, and civil society all play pivotal roles in determining whether the shift in leadership will be orderly and legitimate. The hooks here are powerful. The public watches to see whether democracy can endure turbulence, whether checks and balances function under pressure, and whether citizens' voices influence outcomes in meaningful ways. Each move made by politicians is a signal, each protest a reminder that the people are not passive observers. They are participants in history, shaping the trajectory of their country with every action and reaction. The uncertainty itself generates momentum. The absence of Netanyahu's defining presence has exposed vulnerabilities, ideological divides, and competing visions for Israel's future. Whether the nation will coalesce around a new unified vision or fragment under competing ambitions remains unknown. The stakes are immense: policy, security, economic stability, and national identity all hang in the balance. For supporters of change, this moment is electric, a rare chance to redefine Israel on their terms. For those wary of upheaval, it is a moment of intense vigilance, a reminder that leadership vacuums can lead to chaos as easily as to opportunity. The hooks in this scenario are irresistible to both citizens and observers alike. The tension between continuity and disruption, stability and transformation, fear and hope, creates a narrative as compelling as any historical turning point. Israel stands at the edge of a new chapter, its past firmly rooted in Netanyahu's era, its future wide open. The nation waits, breathless, aware that the next steps will define not just leadership, but identity, legacy, and the very direction of the country for years to come. Friends, history often moves quietly, but sometimes it roars. And tonight, Israel is roaring. Whether Netanyahu is officially out or merely wounded, the message is clear: no power is eternal, and no chair is forever secure. From Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, from Washington to London, the world is watching Israel's firestorm unfold. In moments like these, we must ask not just who sits in the prime minister's chair, but what direction that chair will face next. This is Prof. Richard D. Wolff, reminding you that every political fall is also a lesson, every ousting a mirror to our times. Stay awake, stay aware, because history doesn't wait for anyone.